This is the first floor plan and with all of its typical notes on it. Rather than look at this um, with everything already applied, I'd rather strip it back to the base. So when it comes to drafting for annotations, the plan at that point should be all modeled in 3D. So all of your windows and doors and walls and floors, porches, etc. should all be columns. Everything should already be modeled when it comes to drafting. And the following, and even some of what I'm going to layer on top of here may already be in place, but I'm just building this drawing from the ground up so that you can see what some of the components are and which ones are typical on every drawing set. So first layer would be to add the room names, room tags, both with numbers and names. The template will have it already determined as to the fonts and the sizes for the number and the name and the underline under the name. That I number them all from top to bottom and left to right, so you can see 101, 102 is over here, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, etc. There's no perfect numbering system, but generally, rather than having it all jumbled up and down and crisscross, that's how I generally number it. The first digit in the number represents the floor, so a 0 on the basement. Let's go down there real quick. You have 001, 002, 3, 4, 5. On the first floor, they're all ones, and then on the second floor, they're all twos. So that's the numbering system. Naming wise, I'm consistent with what I name rooms. This is never a living room. It's always a great room. Room is always abbreviated. Dining never has the word room after it. Laundry is always abbreviated. Master bedroom is abbreviated like this, as is master bath, etc. Covered deck is always COV period deck. So those are just the naming standards. I can see I don't have a front porch tag on here. I need to put that on. Adding to that layer, we have beams, which I'm putting each additional layer in purple just so that you can see them highlighted. So I'm not an engineer. We always send my drawings to an engineer, but certain beams you can make some assumptions on, like the porch beams, for instance. So I'll draw those in a thick dotted and dashed line. There they are on the front, and there they are on the back. Next layer up is going to be the beam and header notes, and then the typical header heights as well. And those I've highlighted in green and purple text. So I have a naming system for the beams. They always say, because I'm not an engineer, I always say beam specified by others, and then I number them with the hashtag for the number symbol. The first letter is B for beam. 1 is for what floor it's on, so all the beams that I'm showing in the basement have a 0. If I have any beams on the second floor, which is rare, it would have a 2 in front of it, and then a dash, 01, 02, 03, 04, 05, and etc. And they usually go clockwise around the house. Similarly, for headers, which I typically, if it's going to be a header that is headers are going to go for window or door openings that are going to be between 5 foot and 9 foot. So that would include garage doors, unless the garage door has, unless it's a brick house and there has to be brick above the garage doors, then those would be named as beams and be numbered along with the beams. But headers are the same. I start in the upper left-hand corner On the rear of the house, it always says header by others. The number symbol, H for the word header, 1 for whatever floor it's on. All the headers on the second floor will say H2. All the ones in the basement will say H0. And then dash 01, 02, 03, 04, 05, 06, 07, 08, 09. You can see them just going around the house until you're at 14 over here, and that's the last one. And then the other layer I have on here is I like to mark in maybe three locations a typical header height. So on this house, I have it here. Whoops. I have it here, 8-foot header height, typical, here, and back here. And then if there is a header on the house that differs from that, I mark those out separately. So these are all typical, and that's how it's written. If it's not typical, then I notate those. Note 9'6" header height. And that does it for this layer of note. The next layer would be all of my kitchen cabinets, closet, hanging bars, built-ins, hearths, laundry, wall cabinets and pantry shelving, etc., mudroom benches and cubby holes. And so some of these may already be modeled by the time it gets to drafting for them to do their part, but I'm just pointing that out that this is another layer that are all, sort of similar. In my software, they're all just lines in the annotations layer. This is how I draw closet lines. I don't have two lines. I don't have a dotted line and a solid line. I just have the short dash line, and one of the lines always goes all the way to the edge, and the other one butts into it. I don't draw it like this. I draw it like that. These are all just thin lines. I'm sure the line weights will be different in Vectorworks versus Revit, so I'm not going to dictate what those are right now. If I think they're too heavy or too light, I'll make mention, and we'll just get it corrected in the template. So that does it for that layer. These cubbies are always 12 inches deep, and then an extra 6 inches for the benches, and they're drawn like this. The divisions are just to separate the lockers, the places to hang a coat. They don't separate the bench at all. The bench is continuous, and these I think are like 3/4 inches wide, the divisions. Because this is a wall cabinet, this should actually be a long dash line, or a short dash line. Excuse me. Long dash line. Next layer would be all of the notes for ceilings and showers and linens, wall cabinets. This kitchen cabinet layout is almost on every drawing written like that in a box. Any special notes for tempered glass or fireplace or built-ins or shelves or handrails, the up and down arrows, typical columns that will come back and we'll dimension later on. You can just look around the drawing and see what's the bulkhead notes. These are all on my template. They're all pre-typed and over here to the side. Every drawing doesn't have every one of these notes needed, but they're all pre-typed, so you can just drag them into place. Similarly to how I mentioned the elevation notes being aligned, when it's possible, I like to do that with these notes as well, so you can see covered deck and great room and foyer. And when I put the porch one on there, I think it's probably just hidden behind the porch slab. Those are all aligned. You can see that the master bath and the office and the elevator are all aligned. Usually I would have this master bedroom and the great room aligned. You can see that the kitchen and dining room are aligned, at least vertically. So when it's possible, you can see that the hall and the foyer and the mudroom are all aligned. So I just like to, these two are aligned. I like to do that whenever possible, just to keep the drawing clean. Handrails. This note is on almost every drawing, and it's usually, sorry, that's the wrong one. That's the wrong note, actually. It's a note having to do with the plumbing stack that goes in that position. So that's placed in error. All right, moving on. The next layer up is just the shower heads and the smoke detectors. Shower heads and the shower head note. It's the typical one is just always at 84 inches. I make sure that it's, you know, if the shower head is on another wall like this, I make sure that the note's rotated correctly so it's right reading. Smoke detector is always centered on the door to the bedroom. I don't have it off to the edge. Same thing with this combo unit that's always outside the door. I have it centered on the door. I usually, on each floor, have this located once. Always have one of these combo units at the bottom of each set of stairs. And that's all for that layer. Oh, and then the floor drains, one per garage door, always centered on the garage door and centered on this overhead swing dotted line. They're not dimensioned on this floor. To locate them, they're always dimensioned on the foundation plan. Next layer up is the dotted lines for the roof system. So I'm just showing this dotted line. It's the same line as a story pole and the same dotted line that I use for what was the other thing I was showing you? Can't remember. Oh, but the casements and the awnings and the door swings on the exterior elevation. So I only show the outline pretty much, or what would be visible if there's no like for valleys or ridges or hips, what would be visible on the first floor if there's no living space above it. So on this one, you'll see where the dotted lines are, and I'll just skip real quick to the second floor, and you see that on this floor, because there's no living space above it and it's just the roof, let me highlight that. That's how I depict the roof line on the second floor. So it's showing all the valleys, all of the ridges, all of the hips, etc. And then also I use this medium dash line for where any walls are above. So I've got an offset wall here. This has living space above, and this is just showing the active living space outline of that wall's floor space above. Next layer up is just notating those. And so I will show a note that says dotted line equals roof line. I usually show that in at least 3 areas depending on the size of the house. So you see it here over on the left, on the back, over here, down here on the front of the garage, and then on the front of the house. Usually I just show it in 3 areas. And then the other notes I mentioned are this dash line equals wall above, and on this one it's interior plant shelf above. And then finally, the dimensions. I try to keep all the dimension strings equal in distance between one another, generally. It always goes overall dimension and then major breakdowns of sort of corner to corner where that's possible. So here's an overall corner to corner of the main house right here, and then this dimension looks like it's going from this corner to this corner, and then the next one is from that corner to this corner, then the corner to corner of the office, and then normally I would have one from this corner to this corner and then break that down to this bump out. So I try to be consistent. Back here on the back of the garage you can see the overall length of this whole porch angled area, and then how that breaks down into the garage and the porch, and then the center lines of all of these beams, and the center line of the windows. I try not to mix dimension strings that have a different purpose. So in other words, like this dimension string over here, the entire string is just from the corner to the center of all these windows along the edge. And then in keeping with that, I'll go from this corner and I'm hitting the center of these typical columns. Also, I try to find some areas where I can hit some dimensions through the house. There's one there that I hit a lot of these framing dimensions through the house. I always dimension the kitchen cabinets and how far they are from the walls. Here's another one that goes horizontal through the house. Here's another one that goes top to bottom. Here's one that goes diagonally through the garage. So I just really try to think through everything to make sure that everything, if you're a framer, you would know what the distances are. After you've put all the dimensions on the floor plan, then I like to just take a quick look and isolate an area and say, okay, this whole master suite here, would I know how big to make this closet? Initially it's like, oh no, I don't have a measurement, but I do. It's out here. Or how big the room is, left to right or top to bottom. Or how big this commode room is, left to right or top to bottom. How deep this closet is, or the hall. So I try to, there's a dimension missing here. This should actually be to there. Also want to point out that the last dimension string, the last dimension in a string always ends on the outside of the framing. So that's on all corners, all corner dimensions end on an outside corner. All dimensions end on an outside corner, and all interior strings like this one, or this one, or this one, they all end on an outside corner. And that's the set. Second floor will be identical, except for there may be a couple of notes that show up on a second floor that may not. I can't think of any right now. Maybe the attic. This attic access note shows up on a second floor where it wouldn't show up on a first floor. Skylights, obviously. Yeah, nothing else on this level, at least on this drawing, that's different from what I've already showed you.